We are Vida. We are a life, health and wellness, leadership, and career coaching company. And my name is Justice, and I'm a relationship strategist here on the team. And what that means is when you are ready to speak with someone on our team, you have a half-hour conversation with someone on my team. And during that time, we ask you deeper questions to get to know, why are you reaching out to us and how can we help you? And then hopefully at the end of that call, we'll be able to successfully pair you up with a coach based on your needs to kind of help you as you look towards your goals. So with that being said, my calendar is first come, first serve. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it here in case anyone does have anything front of mind they would like to discuss. I'll also drop this link later on throughout, so no worries about that. But walking us through how this is going to work, it's a little bit different than our previous webinars if you have been to those, but we're going to ask people to raise their hand in the Zoom, if you go to reactions, and we're going to do some live coaching one-on-one with Cait. Ask anything under the sun, and we'll kind of see how it goes. We're going to call on people at random, and then we do ask that you come on camera and off of mute. If you're uncomfortable with coming on camera, at least please unmute yourself. But for those of you that would rather do neither of those, you can also feel free to type your questions in the chat, and we will get to those at the end if we do have time. So I highly encourage, if you have questions, to start typing those out now. And then we will kind of see how we do on time if we can get through everyone. But with that being said, we have Coach Cait here with us. Cait, you want to go ahead and give a little introduction of yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Cait Swami, and I am a life leadership and career coach with Vida. I've been working here for, it feels like longer, but I've been coaching with Vida since February of last year. And prior to that, I have an in-depth experience in leadership development, which is really how I came into the coaching space. But what I realized through that is that there are so many other avenues outside of our work that these conversations can take place. And there's so many ways that coaching can help individuals outside of organizations too. And so that's why I'm here today. I'm really excited to talk about this topic of confidence. Before we even get started, I want you all to know that as someone who does see myself as somewhat of an expert in this space, I too have imposter syndrome, talking about imposter syndrome. So, I just want to say that in essence to normalize this experience here, right? Like that is why everyone has, I'm assuming, come today. Oh, sorry, I thought that note was for me. And so, I just say that because I'm not, I don't have all the answers here, right? Like this hour is for all of you to have a taste of what coaching feels like. And a lot of that is based on you, right? So I'm going to ask some questions and I'm going to get some feedback from you all, but it's really what you want to put into this and what you want to get out of this session today. So it can be, and I assume it will be a bag of Chex Mix here, and I'm excited to get started to see what all is on your mind. And hopefully through that, I'll also be able to provide some tools and tips and techniques that I've seen to be effective, not only for my clients, but also with my personal experience and through, honestly, experience coaching people within, whether it comes to their building confidence in their leadership, in their career, or just general, social anxiety and how we engage in the world and in our lives. So that's a little bit about me. I don't think that there's any more slides. We can probably just get started.
Yeah, just my email and Cait's email. But these will all be sent in the follow-up, as well as just some links that are active for everyone. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and spotlight Cait. And then I believe, Olivia, you said your camera's not working, but do you have a question you want to come off of mute and ask?
No, not right now. We'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Does anybody want to come on camera? Does anyone like to go first? Otherwise, we do have a question in the chat we can jump into.
Well, and actually, Justice, even before anyone wants to raise their hand, I recognize that y'all are probably here because you're feeling not that you're not feeling confident. Maybe I'm making that assumption, right? But standing up in this type of a forum in front of everyone and saying, I'm not feeling super, super confident, or I'm feeling like I don't know how to advocate for myself. It can be hard in this kind of a setting. So feel free to utilize the chat and we can get started. And then whoever that brave, courageous person is, like, I promise I'm super nice. I'm not going to bite. And I guess I just point that out because I can also recognize that this topic and then this type of venue could be tough to be that first person to speak up.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, we do have a couple questions in the chat. So the first one says, any advice on presenting confidence in a job search after a lot of disappointing rejection?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I will answer this question. I would say, a lot of what I'd like to do here, if we can, and I'm happy to answer questions just through a client experience, is really understand you and kind of where you're coming from in this. Jason, if you feel comfortable coming off of mute, I'd love to hear from you what's been happening.
Sure. I am also cooking, but so if I look away,
and for those of you who haven't seen the chat, it's advice on presenting confidence in a job search after a lot of rejection. That's the context.
Yes. And so I feel like I have a lot to offer. When I show people my resume, friends or people that I'm meeting for the first time, I get a lot of, wow, you've done a lot. Oh, that's really impressive. You can do anything. But when I'm applying and don't even get a response to get one interview or get passed up on the second interview, it gets really hard to feel like, well, I do have something to offer and I can show these people that I have something to offer. And I try all the different cover letter styles that people mention. I try all the different ways of formatting and doing a resume, but nothing seems to change. So it gets really easy to just say, I guess I'm just not good enough. And, but yet I will have people say, no, you are good enough. No, you can do this. So how do I have that confidence that I need to, so I can project that when I'm going back at it, going back to square one, going back to the drawing board and looking for a job?
Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear that, first of all, because I can tell, even just in knowing you for a minute, that you do have a lot to offer. And
thank you.
I actually sense that you believe that too. So, the idea of disappointment and rejection, no one likes that, right? And it's very easy to then believe when we get a lot of no's that then we start to believe that, right? It's like, wait, am I good enough? Like, then we question it, and then that impacts our ability to show up in the future. I will say, if you're not working with one of our career coaches, I think that would be a really great place to start.
Okay.
With regard to the confidence piece, it sounds really cheesy, but I do believe that how we respond to these setbacks and disappointments is a big part of it, right? It's that mindset, and it's that resilience, right? Which is obviously so critical in leadership, right? I mean, it's something that I talk about a lot with my leadership clients. It makes us more empathetic, right? It makes us better, right? And so maybe even looking at it as not so much about the rejection and now I'm not good enough, but hey, what could I learn from that experience, right? What did I get any feedback from that interview? Sometimes you don't, right?
A lot of times,
a lot of times you don't, but actually taking that self-inventory and saying have I been doing the same thing every single time that I'm doing the recruiter screen? Maybe there's something that I'm missing here, right? And that's where a career coach can come in and help you with that. And then, I mean, outside of the confidence piece, the job market is just kind of, it's an interesting world that we live in right now. And as someone who has a background in HR and who's been on that side of the hiring table, it's not always like the candidate, Jason can be the dream candidate that we want to offer the job to, but there might be something happening internally that you'll never know, right? So try as best you can to make it not, I mean, it's not always about you, I guess, which is I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but there might be another dynamic at play that's contributing to that too. I I love that you're cooking while you're listening to this.
Yes. I just the gnocchi just rose, so I need to get it off the water.
Yeah.
But I was also actively listening to you too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can come back off mute after you've eaten.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Cait. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Justin.
Next up, we have Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you? What's on your mind today?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. I am trying to, and I understand this can also be like in the relationship with my relationship with money. But you know, it's I deserve money. I deserve money. I'm not meant to be left behind. And I think the question is like, how do I, or maybe it's just more of a conversation. It's just like when I'm setting up things like getting a business card or a website or charging more for my services, it's like, who am I to be doing this? You know? And I think a lot of people also like, oh, I don't know how to do that. But it's like, I don't think it's the fact that you don't know how to set up a website or an Etsy or whatever. It's that who am I to be doing this? Does that make sense? Like how
when
do
you say who am I, is it like I guess I'm trying to understand, is it like that little inner voice that's saying, you know, you're not worthy of having all of those things or doing all of those things? Like what is that piece of it? I guess talk to me a little bit more about that.
It's like I didn't, you know, get school experience or education that a lot of people do have, and maybe that's a problem too. That really kills my self-esteem. And yet I know like Jason, like people look at my resume, wow, you've done a lot, and you're how old? Yeah, because I fucking hustle, like, you know, like, and also like, is it possible to be like a you know, a jack of too many trades, like, you know, looking from a employer side of things, like what am I trying to say? I wish I thought of this more before I asked. Hopefully you're able to follow along. But yeah, I think it's just like my confidence in like my education, and I feel like because I didn't go to school, like, well, you know, I don't know the syntax of that stupid business language, you know, like I don't, is this making sense, or am I just
no, I think it is. I'm going to take a guess, and you tell me if I'm making sense too.
Yeah.
I think, you know, what happens as we go throughout our lives, whether we recognize it consciously or unconsciously, we're receiving all of this information and influence from our experience, from the people or person who raises us, right? And that creates some sort of a belief system about what, you know, a good human should look like. Insert the blank, right? And I sense that what has happened is that there's some insecurity around this idea of schooling, right? Like that there's some belief system that you're holding, which, by the way, you're not the only one who holds this, right? Like if you think about the US, like we, you know, in corporate culture, it's like you go to college and you get this degree, and it's like there's like a path to success, right? But a lot of this belief system can oftentimes it can help us, but it can limit us too, right? So you know, I guess I say that to say that, like, in working with a coach, what might be helpful for you, and we'll send this out as a resource, is really to understand, like, where are you not getting the results that you want out of your life? And then what is that what is that belief system there? So it sounds like there's a belief system around money, right? Or like,
Yeah.
and I mean, it can be anything from, I have to have a degree to do this thing. I don't have the business, like all of these belief systems, like list them all out and then and then fact check them, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you as a fact, and I think other people on this phone could tell you, there are successful entrepreneurs who never went to business school, right? There are successful coaches who don't have coaching credentials. I have a coaching credential and I feel proud of that. At the same time, do I at this point in my experience believe that it was necessary? I don't know the answer to that, right? Like I'm still like changing that and like second guessing that belief system even like as I speak, right? And so again, now I'm rambling, but I think it's important when you think about this idea of like building confidence to really understand what is that? What are those belief systems? What are those little messages that I have about the world for you, about money, about your potential as an entrepreneur? By the way, I love your vibe and like everything that's happening. And then check that, right? So we'll send out a module that like kind of a self-guided coaching tool that can help you start that journey. And then, working with a coach and kind of unpacking some of that, I think would be a really good place for you to start.
Yeah, for sure. If I could ask one more thing, because as you were asking that, I like was, already going through the checklist and how like not to get like political and yet like a lot of this like self-confidence that like us entrepreneurs or even just trying to get a job is like we're being fucked by the man, like like by like capitalism and how like yeah, we're so structured because of society and like especially in America it's like work like how would you, I mean, I believe I can break the system. Like,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like, I don't know how to explain because the system just doesn't feel built for, it's not built for me. And yeah, what kind of like, even mantras could I say to myself to be like, to understand like I can break the simulation that
I think that's a great mantra that you could say to yourself. One of the tools that I think can be really helpful, I've seen it to be helpful with a lot of clients, is for you to actually write that down and then record yourself saying it, right? Like, Elizabeth, you can break the societal structures, right? This is all fake. Like there's enough room for you in the entrepreneurial space, whatever those affirmations are, and actually talking to yourself from that distanced point of view. It's called distanced self-talk, right? Instead of saying, I can do this. I mean, that's also helpful in affirmations, but actually saying you can do this and then hearing your own voice and then replaying that, that can be a really helpful tool to again, going back to the belief system, reinforce, or I guess recreate a new belief, right? Is really what you're doing there.
Yeah, it's rewiring what society has put upon us. Yeah, for sure.
Rewiring your brain. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah. I think I just needed some like confirmation that that I'm not crazy and thinking that the system isn't built for people like me. And yet, that doesn't mean that I can't like break through that. So I think I just needed confirmation in that. So thank you.
Yeah, you're here and you're already doing it. So
yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. And also I will point out too, there's been a lot of really great dialogue in the chat. So when you drop, I really encourage you to read some of the things that have popped up. I've been paying attention to you, but there's a lot of people out there that are cheering you on too.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. We don't have any hands raised at the moment, but there is a question in the chat that I'll read for you. Okay. I was recently promoted and now feel like I'm self-sabotaging because my imposter syndrome has kicked in so hard. I'm more than capable of doing this job, but I procrastinate. I struggle to do any work. I feel incredibly unmotivated to do anything productive. What would you recommend I do to overcome this?
I think I need to actually read the question / if you feel comfortable coming off of mute, I'd love to hear about this idea of self-sabotage and how that's showing up for you.
Right. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And what's your name?
My name is Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah, so I was promoted and I've been in my position or my role here for about 3 years, but on effective June 1st, I was promoted to be in charge of the entire unit that I've essentially been running. So it's kind of like getting the title and the pay increase for what I've already been doing. And yet I've just been dragging my feet on everything. I spend my entire day looking at my phone and reading news and just anything but what I'm supposed to be doing. And I hate it. And I can't seem to get my brain back on track. And I know when the promotion was first being discussed, I kind of had this cringing sensation inside my chest, like somehow being more responsible for everything feels worse because something goes wrong, it's going to be my fault. You know, that was a lot easier to do all the work, even though by being in that position, by being the manager now, I don't have to wait for somebody else to sign off on things. I get to do it. If we need to buy it, I get to do it. I don't have to wait for somebody else to give me permission, but it's kind of like I was being forced into adulting, as stupid as that sounds, but I'm, you know, almost 50 years old. I still look around for the adultier adult to make good choices. And
I
so,
totally
you
know
know,
the feeling.
yeah. I've been here for like 3 years waiting for them to realize how much I really suck as a human being. And they just keep telling me how great I am. Then I got promoted. I'm like, and I feel like now I'm kind of trying to prove, nope, I suck. And I don't know how to overcome that mental block of just do what I've been doing and I'll be fine. You know, it's really nothing above and beyond where I've been, but I just struggle every single day to get my mind focused and make things happen. I have paperwork just piling up, and if something's super urgent on fire, I'll take care of it, but only when it reaches that point. Otherwise, I'm just procrastinating.
I so feel you with the idea of like looking around for the adults. Like that is, yeah. I have a 2-year-old at home, and it's like I'm like, wait, I'm responsible for you. I mean, I know that I am, right? But it's like, yeah, like, or the idea of adulting, right? It's like, why did we ever grow up? I want to hear, you know, when I hear everything that you're saying and this idea of like self-sabotage, what I've noticed, and this is patterns through clients, right? And just research, is that comes from a place of not feeling worthy or like self-worth, that you've earned this job, which in this title, which you obviously have, right? And so what is it that you're telling yourself about your worthiness of being in this position? Like what comes up for you as I say that?
First, I don't feel worthy of anything. There's a deep, deep rooted shame in everything. I mean, I can remember my mom, you know, saying, I overheard somebody one time yelling at their little kids, say, you know, you should be ashamed of yourself. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? And I meant they weren't speaking to me. And I went, yes, I am. I'm deeply, you know, and so I know that that's at the core of so many of my issues is deep shame. And I start doing work on stuff and then I just get sidetracked. I mean, I have done testing for undiagnosed adult ADHD, and the guy said, oh, you didn't have any symptoms before age 12, so clearly you don't have it. I'm like, dude, have you even read anything about women and ADHD? But I got defeated. I stopped doing all the self-care things that I was doing. I was going to the orthodontist. I was going cosmetic dentistry. I was getting my mammogram. Like I was doing adulty stuff. And then when he said, no, you definitely don't have ADHD, I went, then I'm just the worthless person, you know, who can't focus, who can't plan, who can't think past her nose, as my mom always used to say. So, you know, there's just a lot of, you know, one person's opinion just kind of derailed everything for me. And I wish it didn't, but I, you know, obviously let that get in and drive my thought process. And I don't know how to counter that. Intellectually, I understand it. Emotionally, I'm completely stunted.
So I want you to bring to mind someone who you love, like unconditionally, right? Like, I don't know if it's a child, if it's maybe not your mother based on what you've told me, a partner, a really dear friend, a sibling, like someone that you just love unconditionally. And I want you to pretend like they have told you exactly what you've told me. What would you tell that person?
That I understand how they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I would never agree with what they're saying about themselves because I see them completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't tell them, you know, it's not true because those are their feelings. That's how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that they didn't have that struggle because I wish they had the ability to give their own, you know, inner approval and to not feel that shame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would like take that shame away, right? If you could. Yeah.
Because I wouldn't think they'd have anything to be ashamed of. You know, it took me a long time to realize I'm not truly an awful person. I'm not killing cats. I'm not doing, you know, worst case scenario
Right.
things. I'm generally pretty helpful. And, you know, I worry because a lot of my self-worth is built on helping others.
Mhm.
I feel best when I'm serving other people and being of service.
And you're doing that through your job, right? Based on what you've told me, they've promoted you. They see you as a leader. You know, they might not know that you're procrastinating. We can talk about that piece too, right? But like, you've earned this seat at the table. I know that you're loved. I mean, I love you and I've only known you for 5 minutes, right? Like, you have that impact on other people. And so go back to that. Like, I think that there's more to be said about that dialogue of like, what would a friend say to you? And then what would you say, you know, what you would say to a friend, and then also what a friend would say to you, right? Like, we're so hard on ourselves, but when we flip the narrative of like, well, what would we tell it to, you know, what would we actually say to someone that we love the most? Or what would someone who, like, you know, just loves Teresa so much, what would they say to you? It kind of flips the narrative and it gets us out of our head a little bit and more like into your heart. Honestly, that's what it is.
I think, you know, I still struggle with getting a compliment and
Yeah.
believing that people are sincere.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally did not, you know, but they don't
Yeah.
love themselves either. And, you know, I can
It's
kind of
about
see that
them.
side of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's an insecurity in them.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, it was pushed on me that nothing I did was okay or good enough or acceptable, or, you know, they had to tear it down. And I realized because they hurt people. So
There
I
it
made
is.
it my
Yeah.
mission to not be that person other than to myself. So, you know, I uplift others and I encourage others and I speak kindness to the world and try to be the change I want to see. But you're right, when it comes to my self-talk, I'm not that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a lot happening here. And I would say, like, if you're not working with a coach, even like having maybe another, like a consult to kind of maybe get more of a taste of this, you know, it really does, again, boil down to that belief system piece. I think the good news that I hear here is that you're very self-aware of it. And I also sense that, even though you didn't explicitly say this, that there is a desire to break free of that belief system and that mold that you've been living in, you know, this whole life, right? And that you actually don't want to be that way, right? So with the procrastination piece, like kind of tying it to that, right? Like that's kind of going into that self-sabotage bucket. I want you, when you get off this call today, to do one task, right? It doesn't have to be the most complicated thing, but I want you to do one thing in your stack of papers that brings you joy, and feel and know that you've had one win for the day, right? Because what that does is then it's going to help build that confidence that, hey, I can do this one thing, then I'm going to do another thing. And then, you know, I don't want to overwhelm you, right? But action is what really gets that confidence going, right? We often think that we have to feel confident to then take any action. but that's a limiting belief in and of itself, right? The confidence is something that follows. So if you could do that, I'm like already giving you homework right now, but like that's one thing that I think might be a helpful start, and scheduling a consult as well.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being vulnerable.
Yes, thank you so much. I also encourage you to go back and read through the chats because there's a lot of really positive things written in the chat right now. So thank you for coming on camera and being vulnerable with all of us. We really appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you.
Of course. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
Teresa.
So at the exact moment, we have no more questions. Does anybody want to write something? Does anyone feel inspired to step up now and speak? You know, the floor is open for anyone who wants to use this time.
I almost just want to read. I haven't seen, there's so many comments. I'm like, these are so beautiful. Like every like this, it's like, I just feel like I'm enveloped in like this energetic hug right now. Oh, that's a good resource. I've never heard of that, Kelly. The NAP Ministry for Mantras and Info Relating to Resisting Grind Culture. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it really changed the way that I think about my relationship to work.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear maybe that there's something there that could be helpful for the rest of the people on the call.
It's the woman who runs it or developed this idea or this this way of thinking. Her name is Trisha Hersey, and I don't know, go check out her website. It's like when I talk about the NAP ministry to people, I mean, it totally changed my life, really. And when I talk about it to people, a lot of times they think that it's a joke. And I thought it was a joke at first too, but it's not. It's not a joke at all. She promotes taking naps and resting.
Hell yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you know, in this society that we live in this structure, this system, there's so much emphasis on producing and you know, working, grinding, hustling, and we are not machines. Humans are not machines. We can't liberate ourselves from these systems without rest. And so taking naps and even just like sitting down and resting your eyes, right? Or building in time to your day to daydream without saying it would never work, you know, like
Or saying sorry.
yeah, or saying sorry. Yeah, feeling the guilt and the shame that comes just like sitting down to rest. But like when I started really being intentional about napping and resting and daydreaming is when I noticed such a huge shift in myself. I was able to enforce my own boundaries better, and work boundaries, and started thinking about, you know, started daydreaming and just thinking about like what would be amazing. Like my go-to daydream was like, what does a world without money look like? Like, what if we all just operated our normal days without, and money wasn't real. It wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. We didn't do things for money. And you know, the first thought that comes to my mind is, well, it would never work. But it's like we've been conditioned to believe that it would never work. That's like, that just kills us. That kills like our you know, our potential. So yeah, and I just recently left my job and I'm starting a business, and it is definitely a result of coaching through, Brooke was my coach. So it was a result for sure of help from Brooke, but also like reading the NAP Ministry, the teachings of Trisha Hersey, and really shifting my mindset and
Mm-hmm.
addressing the trauma.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing so many powerful takeaways in there. I mean, really, you think about it, right? This idea of like hustle culture, right? And that we should just work harder to get better results. It doesn't work, right? No. And I mean, you think, I mean, it does sound silly, but if we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, like we're not effective in our work. But then you think about, you go to bed early, you drink water, you nourish your body with healthy food, and you wake up the next day. It is like a totally different experience, right? And so I think what you're saying is that coaching really helped you in essence, adopt this new mindset and then put this into practice, right? It's not like you're just saying, yeah, I know I need to nap. I mean, you've carved out that that's a non-negotiable for you. Right. You've set boundaries around that. And you've also opened up in a way that you're now, I mean, you're starting a new business. Like there's so much that is changing and evolving from that by changing the way, it's changing your relationship to work and the way that you see the world. I mean, that is honestly transformational. And you did that, right? Like I think any coach can say like, expect these results, right? But ultimately it takes the client going out and putting in the work, and you're a clear result of that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. Is there another hand raised or?
Catching up.
I have a question actually.
Yeah.
If that's okay. This is Jillian, by the way. So I feel like I sometimes struggle because I can be more soft-spoken. And I feel like that can sometimes be interpreted as a lot of things, but one of them is that like I'm not confident or that I may not be confident in my work. And then I can get in my head about comparing myself to like colleagues and people I know and past colleagues about how I need to present in order to be more of this authority in the space and those sorts of things, when it's really just not me. And I feel I actually used to be more like that and have completely like changed how I've just allowed myself to be more authentic. So just curious if you had any recommendations on that.
That's such a great, it's such a great question. And it's something that I see a lot with my leadership clients that are possibly have more of a preference for introversion, or like to the point about, you know, the way that I communicate isn't necessarily, you know, society's definition of assertive, right? And direct, so to speak. And so I think that the first thing that comes to mind is really understanding what your personal style is, which it sounds like you've done a lot of work around that. And then understanding that assertiveness and confidence is going to show up a little bit differently for that. I think a big piece of what you're saying too is that it comes off in a certain way, right? Like, I think we think we know what people are thinking about us, but we actually, I don't know. I'm sure some of us are really skilled at reading minds because, you know, I'm a little woo-woo. I can believe that, right? At the same time, right, we don't actually know what that other person is thinking, right? And then so we get caught in the spiral of like, I think that they're thinking this about me, and then therefore like their opinion of me matters, and that impacts my confidence, right? And so I would just kind of fact check some of that, honestly. And I think it's an unrealistic expectation for any of us to say that we're just not going to compare ourselves to others. And at the same time, there are ways that we can check that, right? Like, what kind of content are we consuming? Who are we surrounding ourselves with? You know, catching ourselves in the moments where we're saying, I don't think that that person thinks that I'm confident, or I'm not showing up in this way, and actually taking a step back and saying, you know, I'm Jillian, I'm a leader who has a gentle approach to leadership, right? And quite frankly, we need that softness that you bring, right? And so like kind of coach, like tapping into more of that inner coach and acknowledging that inner critic is there and saying all of these things and saying, you need to compare yourself to others. And also that there's another response that could be there. Yeah. So those are things that come to mind. And then I guess another simple tip that I would encourage around the topic of assertiveness is noticing, and I completely do this, so I am not perfect at this, but noticing the type of language that you used. I am just a coach. I am just blah, 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 or I should be doing this thing, right? And I should be working out right now. Switching, like taking out those kind of languages that make you come off as a little less confident or a little less assertive can also be a really helpful tip. And one way that you can do that is start noticing your emails, right? Because in written text, we move a lot slower and we can kind of think about what we're writing. You'd be surprised how often those words come up. And then you'll start to notice when you do it in a venue like this, or in a one-on-one setting or in a group setting. So those are some things that come up. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it's super helpful. I think there's another question here, but I did have a quick follow-up. I also feel like I struggle very much with caring about what other people think. And I feel like when I've worked with coaches before in the past, like the message is like to not care about those things.
It's hard. It's like impossible to do that.
Yeah. I also feel that that's like just not authentic to me, because I feel like what's actually going to change the world, what's actually going to change systems is by also maybe reflecting on some things. Like if people are naming, I don't know, for example, this is more extreme, but just thinking like, yeah, maybe that's not a great example, but just like, I feel like I do care, and I don't give like everybody's opinion weight, but it is at the same weight, but it is something that's like kind of important to who I am, to integrate any feedback of how I could improve who I am, and things like that. So it's hard to like not care when I feel like it's important in order to create the world we want.
Absolutely. And you said something that I think is really important to highlight. It's certain people's opinions of me matter, right? Like, the unsolicited advice from people that cross the street, that opinion doesn't matter of me, right? But if Nicole is giving me, our CEO is giving me some feedback that is really validating that I'm doing a good job and I respect her, I'm going to take that piece. Or if she's saying, hey, here's something that I'm noticing that maybe you could stop doing, or, start doing more of that, then you can listen to that and use that as a growth opportunity. But the person that's walking across the street to give you unsolicited advice, that, caring less about that, I think is really what it's about.
Yeah. And I guess I could use like affirmations or things like that and mantras to kind of, if ever that inner critic is like trying to integrate someone.
Have you ever done the reflected best self exercise, where you go in and you basically, for those of you who aren't members, there's a series of questions, and you ask people that are really close to you, whether they're colleagues or friends or siblings or, people that you really respect, and you ask them a series of questions that basically give you some feedback, but it's more than feedback. It's like those affirmations or those things that they see in you that you may not necessarily see in yourself. Have you ever done something like that, Jillian?
No, I haven't. And it would take a lot of courage.
I really think you should.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. And then you just send it. I'm sure there's like some information on that I can.
Yeah. I can definitely send it to you. And yeah, for those of you who are members, you're welcome to do that. And then for those of you who aren't, you'll just have to sign up to hear more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brilliant. And it looks like we have a hand raised. Sharnita, do you want to come just on unmuted, on camera? What would you prefer?
I'm muted if you don't mind.
No worries.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to see your faces and to hear your stories. You made me brave enough to just say, okay, maybe I can share a little bit. However, the situation with myself, I suffer with imposter syndrome. At first, I was looking like, man, I could do all of this awesome stuff. And here I go. I'm always self-doubting. And in order to make sure that I bridge the gap in certain endeavors that I always take on at work, I went ahead and got my certifications. So I have my project management certification with PMI. I have my SAFE certifications. Even I'm about to take my test to actually facilitate and train others. I also made sure I got my Scrum certification, my Scrum Master certification, because I'm really good at motivating others and helping them see through the clouds and to be a rock star. But here I am, I'm always like, Nita, did you do this right? Nita, did you do that right? Oh, Nita, maybe you didn't do it good enough. Or Nita, you're not good enough. Or I just go to beating up myself and they're like, Sharnita, you're so awesome. You're so wonderful. We didn't think about it this way. Oh my gosh, it's amazing that you're able to go ahead and provide us with a solution. And in the back of my head, I'm looking like, did I actually provide them with the correct solution? Is this really going to work? I know that it's going to work because I know the trainings that I've had to make sure things work. And I'm like, man, I'm overdoing it. I just graduated with my bachelor's degree. I had a break in my work history. And I'm looking like, man, am I worthy enough to actually just go out and say, you know what, I want to just be a regular career professional? But then I put myself in the position to go ahead and be a part of a rotational mentorship program. And now it's like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough work to do. I'm not being challenged to go outside and think outside the box. I'm creating possibilities for myself to make sure that I'm going another mile when I shouldn't have to. So I just have myself just in a little twister to me. I do. I really do. And I don't want to leave my company, not one bit. I love the company that I'm at. It's a very good company. The people are sweet. They're loving. But at the same time, honey, baby, boo, I need to make sure. I'm going to tell it to you real. But I need to make sure that I'm able to thrive and fly like an eagle and make sure that I'm able to soar.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, honestly, what you're talking about is textbook imposter syndrome. It's what I see all the time is as people advance more in their career, they get more education, which it sounds like you have so many certifications and you're now training people on this stuff, right? Like you're now an expert, and that's when imposter syndrome shows up more and more, right? And you're right. Like, it's like, I have to believe it, right? In order for me to go out and actually feel like I can do this. And one of the tools that I like to offer, and maybe we can share it as a follow-up to this, is really when we see those types of patterns happening in our lives, it's about looking at the results that are not serving you, like starting there, and then figuring out what you're doing that's contributing to those results, right? So the results that are not serving you are that, you're feeling like you're an imposter, or you're feeling like you're not worthy of having this amazing job and career that you are, right? The actions that you're taking that are contributing to the results, right? So that might be negative self-talk, right? There's a lot of things happening that, you'd want to unpack there. And then how are you feeling right now because of that, right? So it's results, actions, feelings. And then what is that thought pattern? Like, what are you actually telling yourself? And that's where for a lot of my clients, when we're doing an intro here, is like, you've told me a lot of the thought patterns that are happening. I want to see you write all of that down, right? And I know that that's going to be probably a big list, but then what we do with that is we can actually go through and see, okay, we see this pattern. Now we can go about and change the pattern, right? So what's the new result that I want? I want to feel a certain way at work. I want to, you know, get promoted, whatever that thing is, right? And then work backwards. And oftentimes what we see is like our thoughts fuel our feelings. They cause us certain actions or inactions sometimes too, and then they lead to different results for our lives. And so really for you, like, and we'll send out this tool, but I think for you, like, I'd love to see, you know, really understanding what those thoughts are, and then like looking at all of those and like literally like rewriting what those thoughts are.
Mhm.
And then whether it's recording them and telling yourself the more positive thought, whether it's actually, I know it sounds cheesy, but standing in front of a mirror every day as you're brushing your, or maybe not as you're brushing your teeth because you have to be talking, but as you're getting ready for work and saying, you know, you're enough, you can do this, you're here for a reason, whatever those new beliefs are, to reinforce that and making a habit of that.
Right.
That's what I would recommend. And I know I'm throwing so much information at you, and we'll follow up with all of this, but
No
that's
problem.
seem to be really helpful, is just kind of, yeah, bringing awareness to that pattern and then seeing how you can honestly change that pattern, because those are thoughts that you're creating, right? They're in your
That
mind.
is, yes, you're right, 100%. Okay,
Thanks
I'll
so
go
much
ahead and
for
take that.
sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you
and
so much for
bringing it
asking.
to my face and
No
everyone's
problem.
face.
All right, we have one more hand up from Jennifer. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Hi, Jennifer.
Oh, Jennifer, you're on mute.
I still can't hear you. You there?
There we go. Now
Oh,
we
wait.
go.
I am struggling. Justice, can you hear Jennifer?
Unfortunately, I cannot.
Jennifer, maybe what we could do is we could put the question, I don't know, maybe the question in the chat. I know that's not the best way to do this, but
Unfortunately, yeah, if you want to go ahead and put the question in the chat, Jennifer, we can answer it that way. So what we can do, Jennifer, if you want to please put that in the chat. There was one question that was asked while we wait for her to type that up. And the question was, one second, let me find it. How do you know if you have imposter syndrome, and are there ways to present this? And then Cait, before I hand it over to you, we do have 2 resources at internal that we can send out to. We have the imposter syndrome quiz, and as well as a reflective best self that Cait mentioned earlier. So those are definitely good resources that are public facing if you're not a client. And if you are a client, I encourage you to do that as well. But Cait, if you want to,
is the limiting beliefs one, is that available to them as well?
I believe so. I can double check for you.
I think those 3 would be great tools to follow up with, and then the TFAR model too.
Perfect. We will get all these resources sent in the follow-up email, but if you want to give a quick little answer to that while we wait for Jennifer to type.
And so sorry, the question was, how do I know if I have imposter syndrome?
And how do I prevent it?
So, imposter syndrome is one of these things that is, how am I trying to say this here? It's not like we're like diagnosing you with an illness, right? Like it's you know that you have it because it's a feeling, right? Like you sense that you know, the last person, and I apologize, your name has escaped me, that came off mute. I've done all of these things and I'm still doubting my ability to perform, right? So it's like, it shows up as, you know, maybe you think you're the expert. So that imposter syndrome quiz will be really helpful tool to kind of understand, do I have imposter syndrome? So I'd recommend that you take that. It can also show up in ways of like overachievement, right? So like, I feel like I have to do all of this stuff at work and there's still not enough time, or I'm a perfectionist, or I have to be the natural genius in the room that has all the answers, but I don't feel that way, right? And so it's kind of this feeling of not enoughness or inadequacy, or like I'm just not quite I feel like an imposter. That's what it sounds like. Really, like I feel like I shouldn't be here. I haven't earned my place here. And you kind of question all of your abilities. How do you overcome that? That is a very loaded question. I would say a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today are tools that can help to, I wouldn't say like, rid yourself of it, right? Because most people, I think the statistic is 70% of people, and it's probably more so now because we're actually talking about this, have reported that they've experienced feelings of imposter syndrome at some time throughout their lives. But it's about knowing what those tools are that work for you, right? So I've given a bunch of tools today, I think, through the different clients that have come forward and to talk about their experiences. But knowing what it is that works for you. For some people, like for one of my clients, I found that, or she's found that the distanced self-talk, actually stepping back 10 minutes before a presentation and coaching herself, saying, you can do this, you know your stuff, you're prepared, and talking to herself from that point of view, that has helped alleviate her imposter syndrome, right? But you don't actually know until you start to explore this, whether you have it or not, and then start to work with a coach to figure out what kind of tools will work for you. I've given a ton of information today, and I will say that no therapist, no coach can say this tool works for this specific client, right? But we can provide them, and then you as the client can go out and determine whether that works, right? And again, all of your names are escaping me, but the example of the woman who came off mute, who's starting her own business, right? Like you had to kind of go through that exercise of believing your worth and all of that. And the tool that worked for you was taking time away and napping and daydreaming, right? That's a tool that's helped you step into your confidence, right? So again, I don't want to ramble too much on that. I hope that is helpful for you. We have a lot of webinars that talk about imposter syndrome specifically from a more technical lens that I encourage you to look at too. And we'll send additional resources to help you understand that.
Yes, and so then right at the top of the hour here, I'm going to redrop the links for everyone. So feel free to copy and paste these. There's the consult link for my calendar, our website directly, our YouTube channel to see previous recordings, as well as our Eventbrite for future recordings. Jennifer, I would highly encourage you to email Cait or I, and then we can go from there because we would take your question offline where we can write out a response for you. So with that being said, Cait, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave everyone with?
I just want to thank everyone for honestly showing up and bringing really great examples. I hope that this was helpful. This is an ever changing space and topic, and there's so much to learn here. And so I hope that you were all able to take a few little tidbits. And if you have questions, I'm just Cait@alvcoaching.com. And I love helping people with this. I think honestly, it's one of those things that can change our lives if we're able to figure out how to work with our imposter syndrome and our inner critic and really make it work for us. So I just appreciate, I really didn't know how this was going to go, if people were going to come off mute and talk. So I'm thrilled that this was, it went, we really filled the space. That was my imposter syndrome was saying, what on earth would we be talking about for an hour? But we certainly talked about a lot of good stuff. So thank you. It was honestly all about you bringing that to the table. So I appreciate it.
Yes. So, and thank you again to everyone who did engage and share some stories and come off mute. We know that wasn't always the easiest, but we really do appreciate that. Thank you everyone for spending some time with us today. And we look forward to seeing you at future events.
All right. Take care, everyone.